Hearing and sight. As-sama' wal-basar. It is a mental necessity that sama', hearing, and basar, or ru'ya, sight, are eternal, everlasting attributes of Allah, unlike our hearing and sight. If Allah were not attributed with them, He would be deaf and blind, which are defects because He is alive. We spoke about that. Thus is the mental argument for the hearing and sight. What we just said is the mental argument for the attributes of hearing and sight. Had he not been hearing and seeing, he would have been blind and deaf. And then he would have been imperfect, and the imperfect one is not God. And Nasafi said, الواحد القديم الحي القادر العليم السميع البصير الشائي المريد. The one, the eternal, the alive, the powerful, the knowledgeable, the hearer, the seer, the willing, etc. These are all translated as adjectives because the Arabic words are adjectives, not verbs. So willing here, that's an adjective, not a verb. It means willer, a willer, one who wills. His hearing and sight, they are not senses, which are powers that exist in the creations. That's what senses are. Senses are powers that exist in the creations. And his attributes are not powers. When we hear a sound, we hear by vibrations and sound waves with an ear and an ear canal. The realization of the heard thing happens at some moment for the created one who hears. That's how the created hearer hears. The realization of the heard thing happens at some moment. When seeing, we use nerves, veins, and moving light that exists between the seer and the seen. To the contrary, the hearing and sight of Allah have no beginning. His hearing does not happen when the sound happens and does not need sound waves. For Allah to hear without an ear is not mentally impossible. It is perfection for him. Just as he knows all things without a heart, and he sees himself and his attributes without a pupil or any other organ. He sees himself, he sees his attributes, and he hears his own speech. He sees his attributes. That doesn't mean that his attributes are pieces or parts. He sees his attributes because they exist. We'll come to talk about that, insha'Allah ta'ala. But don't be confused about that statement. He sees himself, and his self is not a body, so he doesn't see a form. And he sees his attributes, and his attributes are not pieces or parts. When we say he sees his attributes, we mean life, knowledge, power, will, sight, hearing, and speech, and everlastingness. Those attributes we mean. He sees his attributes means his life, his power, his knowledge, his will, his hearing, sight, speech, and everlastingness. Whatever is related to hearing is called heard, masmua. That's simple, isn't it? That's how the religion is, very easy, very straightforward. And whatever is related to sight is called seen, mubsar, or mar'i. Some scholars say Allah hears all heard things and sees all seen things, created or not. Others say Allah hears and sees everything. You can say either way. Both of those are valid. Some scholars see that one of those two is stronger than the other. Some say this way is stronger, some say that way is stronger. That Allah hears all heard things and sees all seen things. That's one way. Or Allah hears and sees everything. That's another way. No sound is hidden from him, even if it is very low or very far from us. Its decibels are irrelevant to Allah Ta'ala. How loud it is or how low it is, that's irrelevant. Or where it's coming from. For Allah, that's irrelevant. His hearing is eternal, and the eventual created, heard matters are created. Yani he has an eternal hearing, and he hears with that eternal hearing something that's not created and something that is created. What does he hear that's not created? He hears his own speech, his uncreated speech. What does he hear that is created? He hears any created thing that's heard. So these created things that are heard, he hears those created, heard things with an uncreated hearing. He hears created, heard things with an uncreated hearing. So that means that his hearing didn't take place when the sound takes place. Then it would be created. Whoever has ears or eyes is composed of parts, and hence is a body with length, width, depth, and limits. Whoever has these needs someone who specified him with them. Whoever has length, width, depth, and limits needs someone who specified him with them. Because how did he get those dimensions and not other dimensions when both cases are possible? Yani, is he slim or he's not slim? If someone were slim, then he needs someone who made him slim because he could have been not slim. So if Allah Ta'ala had ears or eyes, then he would be a body with length, width, and depth and limits. And then he would need someone who specified him with those dimensions. That is why it is not permissible to attribute an ear to Allah. There didn't come in any ayah or hadith the attribute of udhun. There did come in the Quran and the hadith the attribute of ayn in the singular. Ayn is a singular. It doesn't mean I as an attribute of Allah. And also there came ayun, ayun, ayun. That's a plural. Plural in Arabic means three or more. Or sometimes doesn't mean numbers. It's a plural, but sometimes doesn't mean numbers, but just in a literal sense. What came in the religious texts as attributes of Allah? Ayn in the singular form. Ayun in the plural form. And there did not come, despite how much the Wahhabis wanted to be, the dual form, Aynan. Aynan didn't come. So don't let any Wahhabi get away with saying Allah has two eyes. Number one, Allah doesn't have any organs or body parts or limbs. He doesn't have eyes. Number two, there is no text in the Quran or the Sunnah from which they can even translate that and misinterpret it. So when they say two eyes, where'd they get that from? Got it from their pocket or from somewhere worse. So Ayn was attributed to Allah, and it does not mean eye. And Udhun was not attributed to Allah Ta'ala. And Aynan was not attributed to Allah Ta'ala. Concerning some hadiths, the Shaykh said, Rahimahullah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, If a statement such as لا ينظر الله إلى من فعل كذا, literally this would translate as Allah does not look at whoever does such and such. It means that Allah will not honor such a person, but in fact will degrade and belittle him. And it definitely does not refer to Allah seeing with an organ or not seeing something. It doesn't refer to Allah not seeing something. Just as this supplication does not refer to something he does not hear. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa' wa du'a'in la yusma' wa nafsin la tashba' wa qalbin la yakhsha'. O Allah, certainly I seek refuge with you from knowledge that does not benefit, a supplication unheard, an insatiable self, that means a self that's never satisfied, and a heart that does not fear. So here, وَدُعَاءِ إِلَّا يُسْمَعْ, a supplication unheard, it means unaccepted. The Mu'tazila said that he does not see himself. And many of them said that he does not see anything at all. The Mu'tazili al-Ka'bi claimed that describing him with hearing and sight means that he is knowledgeable about what is heard and seen. What's that there? That's takalluf. That means he's basically just going too far, so far just to deny the attribute. One thing about those who deny the attributes of Allah Ta'ala is that they have to, when they want to, if they want to talk about theology, they have to talk about God having attributes. They have to say statements that would mean that God has attributes. It's impossible to avoid it altogether. So what do? They will do that. They will give Allah attributes, but then they will explain it, so to say, why they're still denying actually. So Al-Ka'bi, he doesn't want to say that Allah hears and sees, so what does he do? He contradicts himself anyway by saying it means he knows. He's saying it doesn't mean he has attributes of hearing and sight. He's saying if you said he hears and he sees, what it really means is he knows what's heard and what's seen. That's blasphemy. According to that, what they worship is like what Ibrahim forbade. Yani, what they worship, meaning their description of Allah Ta'ala, they say they worship Allah, but they say he doesn't hear or see. Then what they worship is like what Ibrahim forbade his father from worshiping. As we are told by Allah in his saying, إِذْ قَالَ لِأَبِيهِ يَا أَبَتِ لِمَ تَعْبُدُ مَا لَا يَسْمَعُ وَلَا يُبْصِرُ لِمَ تَعْبُدُ مَا لَا يَسْمَعُ وَلَا يُبْصِرُ وَلَا يُغْنِي عَنْكَ شَيْئًا. When he said to his father, "O my father, why do you worship what does not hear, nor see, nor benefit you in any way?" Whoever negates them, the hearing and sight, is not a Muslim, nor the one who says that Allah hears with an ear, or hears like the creations, or sees with an eye. He wouldn't be a Muslim. Explicit textual proof for the hearing and sight includes the saying of Allah, وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, and He is the hearer, the seer. That is also in the hadith listing the perfect names of Allah, as-Sami'ul Basir, the hearer, the seer. We say, once the world was created, Allah saw it with His eternal, unchanging sight. We We do not say that Allah eternally saw the world, for that implies that the world is eternal. Someone might ask, if we are allowed to say that Allah knew about the creation eternally, why are we not allowed to say that Allah saw the world eternally? The answer is comparing sight to knowledge is not valid because knowledge is related to what exists and what does not exist, while sight only pertains to what exists, and likewise, hearing. If something does not exist, it is not seen or heard, though it can be known. وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَبِحَمْدِهِ